Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special one-on-one pre-election edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Monday, October 21st, 15 days until the election. Donald Trump has given a 53% chance of winning the Electoral College, and the genial host is in a deep dystopian depression. And who better to lift us out of that than the sunniest elected official in California and possibly the entire U.S. Congress, Representative Salud Carbajal, Democrat of Santa Barbara. Representative Carbajal, thank you so much for joining us.
You, Jerry, for inviting me on your show again.
Yeah. Well, we always double the viewership when you come on because your wife watches it. So I'm always glad to have you. Hey, I want to get to a bunch of stuff, including you hit the billion, excuse me, $1 billion mark in infrastructure improvement money that you brought to the Central Coast in the last couple of years. But I have a bone to pick with you first, which is you're elected at first in 2016, now headed for your fifth term. And you've always previously answered questions, usually from Josh and me on KYT in a debate with your opponent. How come you wouldn't do it this year?
I think we've seen my opponent has really worked to demagogue and spew a lot of hate about transgender individuals, immigrants. He's peddling conspiracy, MAGA theories. And basically, I didn't want to provide a forum for him to continue to spew that hate and put people's lives in danger. At the end of the day, if it was about policy, good policy debate, I'm always open to that. You've known that. I've always done that since I've been in office as a supervisor, as a member of Congress. But this time, it's been a lot different. My opponent has really focused on fixating and being obsessed with tearing people down, and in my opinion, spewing hate and putting people's lives in danger. And the only forum that he has to really continue to provide that rhetoric of hate would be a debate. You've seen that he hasn't done much other things, and I did not want to aid and abet his performance that way.
So you didn't want to give him a platform, basically, is
Absolutely.
okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you didn't dance around answering that one. All right, look, I just checked Real Clear Politics before we came on, and the betting markets are giving Trump a 59% chance of winning. I checked with my bookie too, and you're at 99%, and the only question is whether you hit the over under a 65. But I mean, seriously, we got this coin flip presidential election. The Senate is almost certainly going to be Republican held. The House depends on a handful of districts in California and New York. So we're on the verge of, electing this twice convicted felon, senile right wing authoritarian person who wants to deport 11 million people, impose tariffs, 1,000% tariffs, lock up Nancy Pelosi, shut down news organizations. What am I missing here? Why does half the country want this? And how do you have any glimmer of hope to offer in amid all this?
I think it's unfortunate that we are terribly divided as a nation. But I believe that the polls at the end of the day will demonstrate that Kamala Harris and Walz are going to win. We've seen polls time and time again, and they fluctuate. And oftentimes they're not right on the mark. So I do not buy that Trump has a more favorable likelihood to win. I believe if you look at the energy, if you look at the battleground states, Vice President Harris is performing really quite well.
All right, and what about? I mean, I know you read my newsletter religiously. You may have missed the last 12 or 13, but I had a piece last week about how the House very well could be the only bulwark against if Trump is reelected and the Senate goes Republican. What's your uh, assessment right now of where things stand in the House. You were here, or Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was here in Santa Barbara last week. You were with him, obviously talking about these races. Where does that stand?
I think there's a good chance that Democrats are going to take back the leadership in the House. And I think if you look at the races and the seats that are likely to be won and some flipped, we're looking at New York and we're looking at California as the main way to achieve that. There's a few others here and there, but I think first maintaining those seats that are competitive for incumbents, and then winning and flipping a number of the other seats. And I believe that we are very likely, if all goes well, to flip the House back to Democratic leadership. But it's going to take people turning out, voting, being engaged, and I believe that we can do that.
So if there are people in Santa Barbara who don't, are looking and saying, well, this is not really a competitive seat. What could I do? What districts should people be aware of in California that are real battlegrounds that are going to help determine who holds the House?
5 battleground seats throughout the state. And it's really important for individuals who are concerned about our future to get informed and to make phone calls, walk, go to those districts and precinct walk if they can. They can make phone bank calls from their own home or here in various places. They need to be more engaged. And again, if depending on how we all view the future and what we want for our country and our local communities, that should ignite a passion and an interest in people to get more involved. And in California, there's about 5 seats that we're looking at.
All right. All right. There's a lot of these scenarios going on about what happens the day after the election, the week after the election. Because if it is close, and a lot of these states, specifically say Pennsylvania, take a long time to count. We know Trump is going to, declare victory on election night. He's going to try to, no matter what the numbers show, sow confusion and chaos and so on. Can you help me understand, break down what role the House will have in certifying the election or not on January 6th? We all know what happened last time on January 6th. And what difference it would make if Mr. Johnson, the current speaker, remains in charge of the House, or it would switch to the Democrats. Just kind of the mechanics of how that all would go down.
Well, first and foremost, know that there's 2 key differences now than the circumstance back then when we saw the insurrection and Trump doing all the shenanigans that he tried to enact and push forward. One, Congress passed the Electoral College Count Reform Act, which codifies and clarifies the role that Congress has in certifying the electoral vote count. That, I think, was key for Congress to be able to do that, to make sure that we don't have the same questions that were peddled about the role that Congress has in certifying the election. And that was done in a bipartisan way, 1. 2, we have a president in office, President Biden, who will be there till inauguration, January 20th, who has the ability to command and dispatch all the resources of the federal government to make sure that what Donald Trump tried to do does not transpire. Certainly, we have states that are independent and can take certain actions, but the federal government will be in a stable position under the Biden administration up until inauguration.
All right, let me drill down a little bit on the Electoral Reform Act, because as I understand it, previously one member of the House or one senator could raise an objection to certifying a state. Now it takes a certain percent, which I think adds up to 85 or 90 members of the House. But certainly the Freedom Caucus and those people are going to be able to do that, to mount to mount objections. And if Johnson is still the speaker, in order to remain the speaker, I would think he's going to enable that.
Certainly, I think the reforms that were enacted make it more difficult. But there's also common sense and the will of the American people and the pressure of the American people to do right by the American people. And I really believe that the reforms that were put in place take away a lot of that fringe element to allow for more common sense in the House of Representatives. Certainly, that's a fear we all have with the current speaker and in him trying to manage his cadre of people that support him. But I believe that I'm not as fearful of that in light of the reforms that we passed. And again, the fact that we have President Biden in the White House until January 20th.
All right. And, I hate to even bring it up, but, it's happened. I mean, what about, obviously the threat of political violence has grown. I mean, we saw it. Trump is, promising to pardon all of the people that have been convicted from the last one. They're organizing militias to, watch ballot counting and so on and so forth. What's your sense of that? And has the House or the Capitol taken any steps to improve security?
Absolutely. Steps have been taken, more resources have been allocated to improve and harm the Capitol when it comes to security. Keep in mind that Trump has sowed chaos, dysfunction, and extremism, and he's going to continue to do that. But I believe that measures have been taken to address his extremism. He's trying to appeal to extremism and really making all these promises that he can't deliver. So we're all hoping that that goes to remind the American people that we don't need chaos, dysfunction, and extremism governing our country.
All right. All right. Let me ask you about a couple of issues here. The situation in the Mideast is just getting worse and worse. You're on the House Armed Services Committee. You've been a supporter of President Biden's support for Israel, but it just seems to me now, Mr. Netanyahu, the president in Israel, is prime minister, whatever, excuse me, his title. He's taken a victory lap, perhaps justified. They took out the head of Hamas and Hezbollah. But he's ignored all these red lines that the Biden administration has put up in terms of a ceasefire, humanitarian aid in Gaza, invading Lebanon. Now they're talking about attacking Iran, as I understand it. And yet we keep sending him more and more sophisticated weapons. You keep voting for him. Is there any limit to that?
I think that we need to take it case by case, but certainly there is a limit. And Israel, in being our strongest ally in the region, also has to adhere to our partnership. What does that mean? And the geopolitical issues are some that transcend that region. And so I think President Biden has done a good job in his diplomacy to push Prime Minister Netanyahu, who, by the way, I disagree with vehemently on so many issues. Over 70% of Israelis want him out. And he clearly is doing some things for his own political furtherment
Well,
to
his
avoid.
favorability, I mean, his favorability.
Absolutely. And I think trying to separate what's in the best interest of Israel from the shenanigans that Prime Minister Netanyahu is pushing is a very important task that we need to work through. And I think the Biden administration is working through that.
So, but I mean, his favorables are up in the 90s now after the killings of these terrorist leaders. He's meddling in domestic politics in the U.S. He obviously wants Trump to be elected. He feels he'll get a better deal out of that. Is there any limit to what you would vote for in terms of sending weapons to Israel?
Absolutely. Again, if Israel does not work with the United States in diffusing some of these challenges and issues, certainly I would take it on a case by case level as well.
All right. Uh, One of the things that you put forth some legislation recently is about a worker shortage. A lot of businesses are having trouble getting enough people to staff their businesses. What is that problem exactly? What is the source of that problem, and how do you propose to address it?
I have moved forward various pieces of legislation and co-sponsored legislation to really address our workforce training, workforce development, to help lift up more people to be able to gain more employment opportunities. But in particular, I moved forward the Child Care Investment Act, which, working with families and constituents and businesses on the Central Coast, I have heard loud and clear that child care prices are astronomical, and they're oftentimes as much as a rent or mortgage. And I am trying to reform the existing tax credit, child care tax credit system that exists on our tax code, to modernize it so that we could lift the caps, we could allow businesses to collaborate to provide more child care opportunities for their employees, and to lift the spending limits for flexible spending, healthcare spending for families. And I think that would go a long way in helping stabilize some of the costs that everyday families, working families, are facing.
Is there a price tag attached to all that?
No, that would be part of the scoring that would take place as the bill moves forward and part of the appropriations process.
All right. One of the things that Trump has talked about on his revenge tour, he was here in California a couple of weeks ago and said that if Governor Newsom did not get in line with what he wanted in terms of water policy in the Central Valley, he would see to it that there would be no emergency funds sent to California in terms in case where we have these awful wildfires. What is your response to that? And secondly, if there is a Republican president and both houses of Congress, what could you do about it?
That just shows you how wrong he is in understanding how government works. Congress has the purse strings, and at the end of the day, there's a negotiated effort and process that involves the White House and the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. And he wishes he could do all that. And certainly he has some level of authority to meddle and mess with things. But at the end of the day, it's not that simplistic. There are checks and balances. And while he might be able to do some damage, I can assure you he can't do the ridiculous things that he is espousing. And so don't forget, chaos, dysfunction, and extremism is what Donald Trump is all about, not to mention lies, lies, lies. He'll say anything and everything to try to appeal to one group or another. But clearly, he's been trying to appeal to the extremists in our country, not bringing people together, not bringing Republicans, Democrats, and independents together. His whole rhetoric is about dividing as a country, going on this revenge tour and espousing all these extreme ideas with his Project 2025. It's ludicrous.
Right, but the Republican Party and your Republican colleagues go right along with it. They don't object to it. They don't say, why don't we this guy's unfit, we can't have him. And yet, here you are in your ads and elsewhere, touting bipartisanship. I mean, aren't you really normalizing this extremism by applauding bipartisanship and indicating that things are, status quo the way they are, in 1996 or something?
Make no mistake, I too am concerned and alarmed by a number of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Republicans that have gone along and aided and abetted this president with his rhetoric and the new Republican Party of extremism that we know. However, there are a number of people that are willing to work and govern, and I will never apologize for trying to find common ground because at the end of the day, my constituents, residents of the Central Coast, and our country want us to govern, want us to find opportunities despite the chaos and dysfunction and gridlock, to work together to govern and move forward policies that improve the lives of our constituents. And I will never apologize for trying to work in a bipartisan way to really govern and make things happen to improve the quality of life for everyone in the United States.
But does that, I mean, you need two healthy parties to do that. You get,
Well, Jerry, keep in
when
mind
one
that
party is, how do you have bipartisanship when one party doesn't want to govern?
well, I think there's always a negotiation, as you know, to pass anything in Congress, and that takes bipartisanship. And there's always a few individuals that are willing to work with you, as I have done on a number of my bills that have passed and will continue to pass. Working towards bipartisanship doesn't mean that I'm not concerned and disappointed and upset about a good number of my colleagues on the other side who continue to sow dysfunction and support Trump in so many ways. I speak out against that. But what are we supposed to do? Not talk to each other, not find ways to find common ground? You have to do that. That's the nature of Congress.
Do you find when you go around the district and talk to people that there is a sense of urgency about this election? Do people realize that we could be sleepwalking into authoritarianism here?
Absolutely. Everywhere I go up and down the district, I hear that from people. I hear concerns. And I'm hoping there's enough Republicans and enough independents that feel the same way. Because at the end of the day, it's a small sliver of people that are going to make the difference when it comes to turnout and votes. And that's the most important thing to know. And clearly, I'm not concerned about the national popular vote. I know that Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are going to win that. That's a no-brainer. Where it gets more challenging is the battleground states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, all of those areas, those states are the ones to be concerning. And the second level of states, battleground states, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, that's where this election is going to be called, which I think the bigger question is we need to do away with the electoral college that is obsolete now and not even functioning in any appropriate, constructive way.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. You know what, Salud? The South won the Civil War. That's what happened in the end, and the Electoral College and the Senate, and don't get me started on that kind of stuff. All right, let me ask you one more question about what Trump is promising, which is to deport 11 million people. Not just people who may be here illegally, but break up families here in the U.S., not at the border. Dreamers and others. What can the Congress or what can you do or anything to try to prevent that? The executive branch has an awful lot of authority and power in that area.
First, let's back up a little bit. Keep in mind that we had a bipartisan proposal that was worked out in the Senate to address border security. And there's a number of bipartisan bills that we've had, the Dream and Promise Act, the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. But Trump has worked to kill all of those bills because he transparently has said, I want to use that for political reasons. I don't want to solve our immigration challenges. And now he's taken that ante up even further and said, I want to deport 12 to 13 million people that are in this country in a non-documented fashion that are propping up our economy, our agriculture, you name it. And he could well try that if he was to be president, which he's not going to be president. But I could see him trying to do that. I will tell you the challenges that would provide to our economy, the devastation it would provide to our country, food prices, you name it. It would be devastating. And I think the pressure of the American people would come to bear immediately and would remind him of how wrong and misguided that is. And as well as Congress. I think Congress, in any negotiation that goes on, will no doubt include that as a major issue of negotiation with the White House, should that be the case. But this is all hypothetical, because I will tell you, Looney Tunes, Donald Trump, chaos, dysfunctional, and extremism that he is spewing is not going to be president.
All right. All right. Well, you heard it here first. All right. Let me ask you a couple of things about state politics. Are you going to vote for Proposition 33, which would enable local rent control?
You know, I need to look at that proposition. I'm still in the
You haven't
process of
voted
filling
yet?
out. I'm still in the process of filling out my ballot and looking at all the state propositions. I have enough to worry about at the federal level and all that we're doing from the federal
But You're
standpoint.
going to vote, right? I mean,
I am going to vote, and I am going to look at that, and I will make a determination, and I'll let you know.
how about Measure I, the sales tax increase in Santa Barbara? You going to vote for that?
The sales increase in Santa Barbara, now that I am familiar with, and that I am still giving consideration to. I'm looking at everything, but there is a good chance that I will be voting for that.
Yeah. And what about Measure P, which the community college bond? You for that?
I am supportive of that. I think there's only been a similar measure decades ago, and we need to improve the facilities at community college, Santa Barbara Community College, to make sure that we are providing world-class facilities that need serious modernizing. There's so much decay going on in those facilities to be able to give our students a better environment for them to learn and study.
All right. Last word to you, Representative Carbajal. What's at stake in your reelection?
Well, you know, I'm not taking anything for granted. As you saw, there's a number of commercials that I have going on right now. I have an infrastructure of a campaign staff, grassroots, that are, we're getting out the vote and making sure that at the end of the day, we have a successful campaign. Obviously, we're very optimistic that we will get the support and earn the support of residents here on the Central Coast, and that I will be able to continue to fight for them and represent them in Washington and do the best that I can to address the priorities and challenges that they're facing, that they have told me about, whether it's addressing immigration reform, securing our border, making healthcare more accessible, bringing down costs for families, healthcare, groceries, housing, making sure we're providing more employment and economic opportunities for families, addressing climate change, bringing down prescription drug costs more beyond what we've already accomplished in the previous Congress. Those are the things that I'm going to continue to fight to make sure that we're lifting up middle-class working families, bringing up their quality of life, and making sure that we broaden everyone who can achieve the American dream here on the Central Coast.
All right. Where are you going to be on election night? You going to go to the Dem Women Watch Party or the
I'm going to go.
county committee?
I'm going to all of them. I'm going to be going to both parties that will be taking place, and look forward to it.
Where are you going first?
Probably Democratic women.
Okay. All right.
And
Fair
then I'll
enough.
go
All
to
right.
the other one.
Representative Salud Carbajal, we always appreciate you speaking with us and taking the time, and we look forward to election night. I'll be on KYT offering my blinding insights, and I may have to give you a call to find out what's going on with those House races. Thank you.
Forward to it.
Thank you very much, Salud.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.